Hello my bookish friends out there in booktube land. In this video we're going to take a look at 10 easy reads for summer that will only take you a day or two to get through and are simply wonderful. So without further ado, let's look at them, shall we? First up, and probably the ultimate summer book, is The Enchanted April by Elizabeth von Arnim. So it's 1920s England and Lottie Wilkins is feeling rather stifled in her relationship with a rather boring solicitor husband. And she sees an advert in the paper that says, "For rent, one Italian castle for the month of April." And she has been saving up some cash for a rainy day and thinks, perhaps this is the rainy day I've been saving up for. But later she bumps into the pious Rose Arbuthnot, who also happens to be staring intently at the same advert. And then, along with the avid socialite lady Caroline Dester, I think her name is, and the rather elderly Mrs. Fisher, they end up embarking on a journey over to Italy for the month of April, an enchanted April, where they begin to forge unlikely friendships and discover themselves in a most wonderful and beautiful way. If you've never read this book, you really should. Our second book also takes place in Italy, but it's a little bit different. This one will get your emotions going up and down. It will raise your ire at times, but also give you a wistfulness for love. And it is Ian Forster's Where Angels Fear to Tread, taken from Alexander Pope's poem line, Fools Rush In, Where Angels Fear to Tread. So in the story, Lilia Heriton is a widow who goes on a break to Italy again with her travelling companion. And she falls in love with a man called Gino, 12 years younger than her. So not only is he younger, he's also Italian, and the Heriton clan back home do not like it one bit. Worse though, she falls pregnant again, and you'll be quite shocked at the reactions. Now I can't give too much away in this book because it's quite short and I don't want to give spoilers, but needless to say, the Heriton clan of Edwardian priggish families send out a representative to Italy to challenge the Italian side of the argument over something rather delicate and awkward, and it will certainly get hold of your imagination and your feelings. I can't say any more than that, but if you've never read Forster, this is a good book to start with because it's quite short. You can get through this easily in one day or two. So that was the second one, Where Angels Fear to Tread. Summer is always the time to dust off a good murder mystery and get hooked up in the goose-fleshing pages. And in third place, we are taking a murder mystery set in the dazzling sunshine. It is Evil Under the Sun by Agatha Christie. So in this one, it's a Hercule Poirot mystery. He decides he needs to take a summer break to a little secluded Devonshire hotel on a little island. And you know, the guests don't see what's coming, unfortunately. They should. I personally would run as soon as Poirot turned up because someone's bound to die. And they do, of course, because it's a murder mystery. Arlene Stewart is a beautiful, dashing Hollywood actress. She's also married and she's at the hotel. But so is one Patrick Redfern, also married, along with a load of other guests. And there's a great tension in the air, a sexual tension, and lots of flirtation between Mr. Redfern and Ms. Stewart. So when Miss Stewart goes off to sunbathe one day at a part of the cove, others think she's gone for a small flirtation with Mr. Redfern. But when she doesn't come back, people set out to find her by rowing around the island. And then the trouble begins. Have you read Evil Under the Sun? Have you read Agatha Christie? If you haven't, you really should. You know, some may say she's not the best writer technically or whatever. I don't see all of that. She just writes really, really good stories. And it's summer, isn't that just what you want? Although, if you read it on a beach, you might be constantly looking over your shoulder, if you know what I mean. In fourth place is the rather mesmerising, somewhat charming, slightly off-kilter work by John Steinbeck of Cannery Row. When I was looking for some short books to read for summer, I came across this, and I've not mentioned it ever since in my early days on YouTube I reviewed this book. It is simply lovely. In Cannery Row we have a group of inhabitants who seem separate from the rest of the world, and it challenges our modern sense of materialism and constantly chasing after things and luxuries, because all the characters in this are somewhat down and out. They're kind of deadbeat, but at the same time they lead such rich lives and seem to have maybe more sense of what it means to be happy and alive without the luxuries than people who strive for luxury and money but don't really have a life. So your main character in this is Doc, a young marine biologist who lives down right on the seafront, and he likes to take in animals and look after them. He's also available for everyone to just drop in and pour out their hearts. There's also the bordello with the girls up there and how they like to live their own little lives, going out here and there every now and then. You've got, is it Mac? Mac is great with his two friends. They're like bums really, just sitting around through the day, but they've got that hobo kind of wisdom about them. They're grizzled and they've seen the world and life. They don't want to work too hard. They know that life is for living, not for just earning money. You've got the painter, I can't remember his name now, he's building a boat all the time. He's just finding odd bits and bobs to piece it all together. You've got Li Chong, the Chinese man who runs a bric-a-brac store, a hardware store, but the thing is it seems to have absolutely everything in it. There's no sense of business ethic, of managing your niche and making a plan and all that kind of stuff. And the characters just move, they come and go. It is life. It is what Steinbeck does best, but is there something deeper beneath that he's commenting on? Steinbeck nearly always comes from an angle of some kind. Read Cannery Row if you want something a bit different. If you've never read Steinbeck, certainly read it. It's a good start. So there you go. John Steinbeck's Cannery Row. An absolute delight. Not in the funny ha-ha or swooning or moving way. It's stirring. It's quietly moody, deep within the soul. Our fifth book is Kim by Rudyard Kipling. This is a book I absolutely love. It just reeks of sunshine, set as it is in the 19th century Indian Raj. Kim himself is a young lad. He's a bit of a vagabond, a bit of a street urchin. He's very resourceful and quick on his feet and quick with his tongue, dodging danger. And he makes friends with everybody around him. Now, he happens to be born of an English soldier, but his dad's long gone and he's just grown up. We get no sense of being parented. But everyone seems to like Kim and Kim likes everyone. He is full of wonder for the beautiful world around him. He considers himself Indian and he loves the Indian landscape, the Indian people. And Rudyard Kipling, he just evokes the atmosphere so well. You think colour, you think sounds, you think bustle and hubbub, you think smells of spices, of herbs, of dust, of open fields and cattle, everything. Now Kim, in his strange kind of way, getting attached to people, bumps into an old priest called a lama. And this lama's on his own mission for redemption from the great wheel of life, great karma. And Kim decides that he's going to tag along with this aged priest, whether he likes it or not, and go on the adventure with him. And so they set out across India, going to different places. But he is drawn in by the British intelligence service at one point to join in the great game, as it was actually called, of espionage against Britain's enemies. There are so many well-drawn characters in this. It's so evocative. It's so charming. It's got all the sense of adventure you would imagine people would have thought about when they thought of India, who had never lived there. Its mysteries just come through these pages with some of the most wonderful, enchanting characters as well. And the way it's all put together, the way they talk, this book is a work of art. So if you haven't read Kim, maybe this summer is a good time to read it, as it's 220 pages long, so you can get through it rather quickly. In sixth place is an author that you very rarely even hear of nowadays, but these books are designed for summer. They are crafted out of the same stuff summer is crafted out of. And it's H.E. Bates. Do you know what he wrote? He wrote The Darling Buds of May. And this is his third book, Oh to Be in England, which is part of that series. So in Oh to Be in England, which is only 120 pages, a proper novella, Ma and Pop Larkin, the central characters, are looking forward to the fact that their new grandchild, Blenheim, is going to be christened, along with his brother Oscar, who hasn't been christened yet for some reason. And when the visiting christener, the Reverend Candy, I think his name is, if I remember, is coming, he finds out that the rest of the entire Larkin clan hasn't been christened either, and so is determined to sort of dip the whole lot of them and do it all en masse. Well, Pop Larkin, if you know anything about the Darling Buds of May, he's this gregarious, outgoing lover of life, and if he can get a chance to drink some beer or some cider and to put a fun fair together and have a party, he'll take it straight away. And so that's what he does. He sets up a wonderful fun fair for everybody to have a great day, all celebrating the Larkin family getting saved by the Lord with their christenings. But as much as he invites people, there are two characters he does not expect to turn up. And so the joy and hilarity and the jinx begin. And one thing you'll get from reading H.E. Bates, with Pop Larkin especially, is he's a heroic comedic character and is full of the quips and one-liners so unique to the native English villager. And you'll get a fair few of them in this. So if you've never read anything by Mr. Bates, I think that's what you should read this summer. In seventh place is a book that there are just not enough superlatives to give to it. And it's a book that many people think they know the story, but they don't if they haven't read it. What they're referring to is either a film or a cartoon or even The Muppets, and it is Robert Louis Stevenson's Treasure Island. They're the beautiful original Cumberband edition of Penguin books there. Treasure Island is just what stories are all about. Adventure, intrigue, tension, good versus evil, and seeing things from a child's perspective as well. There's something endearing, something permanent, something immortal in us that is always youthful. This is not just a children's book. If you haven't read it because you think it's a children's book, I challenge you to read it this summer and see whether or not you don't like it, because it's so adventurous and action-packed. Of course, Jim Hawkins is the lad who's our main protagonist, living at the Admiral Benbow Inn, when some unusual pirate comes to stay. And he's constantly worried about a man with one leg, or a man with a wooden leg, and he keeps telling Jim, have you seen him? But eventually the man dies, and Jim looks in his chest and finds a particular map to a treasure island. And so the story suddenly gains momentum. And suddenly Jim finds himself quickly beset by characters such as the blind man, and also coming across a man who happens to have one leg, but it surely can't be the one who is being referred to earlier in the book. And eventually Jim Hawkins sets sail on a ship with none other than Long John Silver and a whole host of his cronies, who are the real pirates. Now, will they find the treasure on Treasure Island? And what actually happens on that journey? It is tremendous, this book. I love this book to bits. And if you've never read it because you think you know it or because you think it's just a kid's book, you've got to read it. This is what stories are all about. And summer, in my opinion, is the best time to read this. And if you can read it down by the beach, be warned, you might try swimming out to get on a boat or get to some island somewhere. Now, in eighth place is a very different kind of book. Still short, you can still get through it in a day or two, but it is very different and it will take you on a completely new mood. It will also be a good way to introduce you to an author you may not have read, although you'll know her, of course. And it is Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. Have you read any Virginia Woolf? She's not always the most straightforward to read. She's crafted, working on the art of literature. But in Mrs. Dalloway, she just lands a triumphant blow for what you can do in a story. Mrs. Dalloway is arranging a society event for her parliamentary husband. And we see just one day from her perspective as she goes along with her inner thoughts, the stream of consciousness. And we find the thoughts and reactions of other characters through the day. It's very, very good for introducing you to stream of consciousness. You'll recognise that this is how our minds actually work. But through these snippets and inward monologues, you get to discover who the real characters are. You get to know the protagonist and her sense of loneliness and isolation. But also, at the same time, across London, is a man called Septimus Warren, who's suffering from shell shock after coming back from the First World War, and how these two lives intertwine with one another, giving us a certain observation about human life. So if you want something more thought-provoking, something to mull on, and something that will stay with you long after you've read it, pick up Mrs. Dalloway. The 9th book on our list, and is a book that is just the perfect read for summer, is a book that's probably been mentioned by me more than any other on this channel since I began it. And it is A Month in the Country by J.L. Carr, and I do not apologise for bringing this up again to all of you who have watched me for a long time. I know so many of you that have taken my recommendation eventually and read this, and everyone's response has been positive. This is just one of the most charming books ever written, and is so perfectly symmetrical, and you'll know what I mean by that once you've finished it, once you hear the latch on the gate. This is just perfect. So our main character, a guy called Birkin, he's come back from the war. He suffers PTSD, as we would call it today. And he's got to get back to work, and he's a painter, or an art restorer, I should say. And he takes a job in North England. And his job is this old, out-of-the-way village with its own Norman church. And it's rumoured that behind the plaster of the church is an old medieval fresco. And Birkin's job is to slowly restore the fresco. And it's so simple. You start with him up the scaffolding, slowly peeling it away, but he starts to get to know the painter by the painting methods. This attachment across time to someone like him, and someone whose skill he can still appreciate as it comes to life once again before him. That it defined and drew some of the characters from the village back then, and how Birkin gets to mix with villagers in the present, right now, or in the 20s at least. And how he finds a sense of joy for life again amongst the villagers and their curious antics. There's that touch of forbidden love that comes into this. Simultaneously, across the little road from the church, there's another man called Moon, who's also been in the war, and he's an archaeologist and has been tasked with discovering whether there's a Roman fort in the area. And Moon and Birkin hit it off, often having their breakfast together early in the morning before getting to work. But there's something symmetrical about Moon and the past as well. And what about the Reverend and his wife, Mrs. Keach, and the family that really take a shining to him and invite him round for dinner most Sundays, and the little travails he has to get into? This book will make you glad you're human. This book is what life is all about. It will make you want to go for a walk through a field. It's about a month in summer in the country. Our 10th and final book is also from an author whom I always read in summer, because for some reason his books always take place in the eternal sunshine of a happy world. And it's none other than a P.G. Wodehouse, and it belongs to the Blandings series. This one is Galahad at Blandings. Now, Galahad Threepwood happens to be my favourite character in all of the Blandings series. Blandings is a rich, aristocratic estate, but we're talking the 1920s or the Edwardian period where they've lost a lot of their influence. In this book, no matter how I try, I'm not going to be able to summarise this book because you can't with Wodehouse. Did you see the break in the video? That's because I've been trying endlessly to try and summarise this book. The plots, in some respects, seem so convoluted, but actually they're very easy, but trying to describe them, because it's all hijinks and set pieces, is quite tricky. So, we have a guy called Sam Bagshot, and he's been given the elbow by his true love, who happens to be the secretary, the young secretary, of one Veronica Wedge, whose mother lives at Blandings Castle with her brother Lord Emsworth. Now, Sam Bagshot wants to inveigle his way back into Veronica's affections, and Galahad thinks he'll help out. He smuggles Sam into Blandings under a pseudonym. Now, meanwhile, one Tipton Plimsoll, who is affianced to Veronica herself, it's been discovered by Veronica's mother that Tipton has lost all of his money on the stock market. Now, you have to remember this is the time when the aristocracy had land and title, but they didn't have much cash, so they married money, if you know what I mean. And Veronica's mother wants to break this all off and has a letter written in order to scupper the arrangement. Galahad is asked to intercept the letter. Do not let it get into Veronica's hands, otherwise she's going to give Tipton the heave-ho, and that will be two young lovers who are up the creek and have had their hearts broken. Galahad is determined at all costs to make the young lovers meet one another, but you don't factor in Lord Emsworth, with his only focus being on his prize-winning pig, the Empress of Blandings, and his completely vacant head. He stumbles across the letter and decides to send it to young Tipton. How are things going to work out? Believe me, I know that summary may sound overly complicated, but it's not. And it may not even sound that interesting, but believe me, in the hands of P.G. Wodehouse, the way he turns phrases, what he can do with a pen, no one else can. It's absolute joy to read. So there you go, that was our last one, Galahad at Blandings, coming in about 160 pages. I hope that you've enjoyed this quick run through 10 brief classics you can read, and they're designed for summer, they're perfect for summer, and you can get through them in 1 to 3 days quite easily. So let me know down below which one intrigues you most, which one you may even read, or share with the rest of the community what your favourite summer, or who your favourite summer author is, or what your favourite summer read is that you would recommend to everybody else. Until the next time, I wish you joy in whatever you read.